Love that slide.
Hi, everyone. I know people are still coming in. As you come in, do introduce yourself in the chat box. Share your name, where you're from, what you're looking forward to hearing during this session. We love the chat box at QRCA because it's a way for us to get to know each other, meet new people, and just share what's going on. And we'll start in about 1 minute. Ava, yes, everyone is muted. The only people who can speak are me and the panelists. Welcome, Suzanne. Welcome, Debbie. Hey there, Mindy. I know there's a lot more of you guys out there, so let's introduce ourselves. Love to say hi, even though you can't really say hi back to me.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us, who's ever jumped on.
Hi there, Deanna, welcome. Hello, Carrie, Holly, Marisol.
Hey Suzanne. I always feel like these should have background music going on when we get started.
For those who can't see, because you're seeing the screen right now, that's Sherry who's talking, one of our panelists for today. Our pleasure for organizing. I didn't really do anything. I'm just your host for today, your Vanna White. Welcome, Tamara, Catherine. All right, so I'm gonna get started even though there are people still joining. My name is Shannon Danzy. I'm a principal of an independent consultancy that specializes in online qualitative research called Danzy Consults. I'm also the co-chair of the QRCA New York Metro chapter. For those who are joining us who haven't a clue what QRCA is, welcome. QRCA is a global organization that's for anyone and everyone who uses qualitative research or oversees qualitative research in any way, whether you work at a facility, whether you're a moderator, whether you're a consultant, whether you're client side, a UX strategist, or work at an ad agency. We are all those things, and we welcome everyone who are those things to join us. We are the New York Metro chapter. We cover New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, but given that New York City is a global place, we welcome everyone from around the world to attend our sessions, which tend to be every 2 to 3 months, so keep an eye out for that. Our URL is qrca.org. We encourage you to visit that. We also encourage you to visit the events page because there's a lot of sessions coming up, from everything about UX to local events in other areas. So if you're from Minneapolis, I saw someone from there. There is a Minnesota chapter meeting that is coming up, so I encourage you to join those. There's one coming up for Georgia. But just to share with you a couple of events that are coming up that we think might be of interest to everyone here. They are events associated with our QRCA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. This task force has been around since March, maybe a little bit earlier. I'm one of the co-chairs of that as well. And we have been rolling out a series of listening sessions and events that are speaking to the events that are going on right now, the horrible events that are going on right now, as it relates to systemic injustice towards Blacks. But we also have events that have been scheduled talking about inclusive research. So just a couple of those events that are coming up. On the 10th, we have a session that's called Dear Designers, We Need to Talk About Race. And that one is looking at the UX world and how race and ethnicity plays a role in what happens when we're doing research with these populations. That is again on July 10th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. That is unfortunately only open to QRCA members right now, but we believe we will be opening it up to anyone who is of interest. One event that is definitely open to all people takes place on Tuesday, July 14th, and that one is called Inclusive Research, Making Research Accessible to People with Disabilities. That too is an important subject. I'm sure some people don't automatically think, okay, well, if I'm doing a webcam focus group, is what I'm doing accessible to someone who is blind or hard of hearing? Same things apply for in-person research as well. That session is open to all people. And lastly, stay tuned for a town hall on race, ethnicity, and diversity that will take place on the last Friday of this month. It will hit the event calendars later today. That will include a number of presenters that are talking about the historical underpinnings of what is happening right now in the US of A. Talking about those current events and how these current events are going to impact our future. And then we're going to be bringing it down and having some listening sessions where we're talking amongst ourselves about what we heard, but also learning how to tackle our unconscious bias, as well as being more empathetic. We all can learn to be better listeners, be more empathetic. That is going to take place on the last Friday of this month, so keep an eye out for that. All right, do continue to introduce yourself in the chat box. We love to meet new people, and I hope you meet new people as well in there. I'm going to move on to talking about our session today. And it would be nice if this would cooperate. There we go. All right, so today we have a great lineup for you with some great ladies. We're going to talk about how to reinvent beauty and wellness brands for this new marketing environment. We have 6 panelists, 1 host, and I know you guys have a lot of questions. We do ask people to put those questions into the chat box. And when you put those questions into the chat box, also tell me who it is that question is for. Is it for all the panelists? Is it just going to be for Janice, Sherry, Kathleen, Robin? And give me a little bit of context, especially if that question isn't asked automatically. And it doesn't have to be 2 lines. You can just put a couple of words, but it helps to clarify the question and it helps me be able to direct the question to the right person. Make sense? All right. So I'm going to introduce the moderator for this panel. Again, how to reinvent beauty and wellness brands for this new marketing environment. Moderating this panel today is Leslie Jane Seymour. She's a previous editor-in-chief of top-selling magazines like More Magazine, Marie Claire, Red Book, and Teen Book USA. She was the beauty director of Glamour and senior editor at Vogue. And in 2018, Leslie launched the Covey Club, a club for lifelong learners that is a platform for women to bond over issues of interest and concern through virtual salons and other social media platforms. You can check out the site at www.coveyclub.com. I can tell you, I have lipstick on my teeth. That's a beauty mistake. Sorry, ladies. I'm not representing you correctly. Covey Club is amazing. I'm on there. I actually sent it to my mom the other day. She's been checking it out too. So we give it 2 thumbs up. And with that, I pass it over to Leslie.
Yeah, now I'm going to have to check my teeth before we talk. Okay. If anybody sees anything, let me know. Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. I'm down in wonderful New Orleans, and you're lucky it literally just stopped absolutely torrential raining here. So you'll actually be able to hear me, and we hopefully won't be cut off. It's sunny outside. A few moments ago it was a little scary. So I'm so glad to be here. I love the beauty business. I love Reinvention. One of the things that More was all about, More Magazine, was about reinvention. And then when I left there and started Covey Club, it is the site for people to come talk about their reinventions and how they're going to reinvent. And I really believe, like I think all of our panelists do today, everything. I call this the great reinvention that is coming, unlike the Great Recession. I think everything's going to be reinvented, from whether we go to work 4 days a week, to how we go to work, to what we put on our faces, to what we don't. Absolutely, how we treat our families, how we treat, our elders, everything is going to change. So this is a wonderful time to do this. And I'm really excited because I have this great panel of 6 dynamic thought leaders, and they have cross-functional marketing expertise from concept to launch in the beauty and wellness categories. Today, we will talk perspectives about what needs to be reinvented to succeed. So from the client side, in product development and fragrance development, we have Janice Hart. You can all wave. I guess your names are there, but it's always nice. Who's currently with Bell Flavor and Fragrances. Also, we have Joy Rudd in Consumer Insights with Edgewell. From the agency supplier side, as head of brand strategy, we have Sherry Ketting with MSLK, a branding agency. From a branding agency, meet Kathleen Carroll, president of the Branding Clinic, a brand positioning and consumer insight consultancy. Our QRCA host and co-chair of the New York City chapter, Robin Along, CEO of Lightbeam Communications, a market research and strategy firm. And lastly, the founder of this group today, Sheree Buziak, CEO of Beauty Edge, a beauty and wellness marketing product development advisory consultancy. So if that's not enough firepower to get these answers today, then there is none. So good to see everybody. And this June 10th, as today is the 57th anniversary of the Equal Pay Act. So that's a whole nother panel, I think, that we have to do after this. So let's start with Sheree. Why don't you talk a little bit about how did this group of women come together? How did it lead to wanting to share an interdisciplinary point of view in this webinar? And how is that better than just your individual approach?
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you for moderating, and thank you everyone who's joining us and the team that's on the screen with me today. So how this all came about was this thing that's popped into town called COVID. And it was about March 13th, and as an entrepreneur in my own business, suddenly, not only in my household had things stopped, but also in my business things had stopped. And what happened at the same time was this thing called Zoom. Suddenly I was getting these Zoom invitations, and I heard of Zoom before and I had tried it, and it just wasn't for me, but it started coming up more and more, and I was on these chats. So I reached out to a collection of my colleagues that you see on the screen here that I just, I wasn't asking about business per se, I wanted to know, how is everyone? So I sent them an email. I said, hey, let's get together. I want to know how you are. And everyone said hello, and everyone said yes. And so we started on March 27th. I'm pretty sure that was the date. And of course, I had the free Zoom version, and we were just talking and going, and we just shut down after 45 minutes, and I didn't know what to do. So I quickly sent an email, and I said, you guys want to do this again? And everybody said yes. And I wanted to point out one thing, though, during that first session, is that my first question was, how is everyone? And I really did want to know, because these are not only my colleagues, I've known everybody on this panel anywhere from 10 to 15 years. And it opened space for us to really share our feelings. Some of us were in better spaces than others. Some were worried about their employees and how they were going to take care of that. For me, I was, like I said, everything just kind of, whatever potential projects I had just stopped. And it just opened up a great dynamic for us to explore potential. So when we gathered again on the second meeting, we very quickly said, hey, I think we have something here. We all have diverse backgrounds. We'll send a link later about our different backgrounds and such, and you'll get to know us a little bit more on this panel. And we quickly coined ourselves Women Warriors in Business. That was like the second session. And then we were introduced to Leslie and really came up with this platform of reinventing marketing and branding in this new world. So that's pretty much how we came together. And I am honored to be on this panel. We've been meeting for 12 weeks every week. There's been a lot of thought put into this, and I hope that you all enjoy it and leave with a lot of insight.
Great. And what's really funny for me is we started Covey 2 years ago, and we had to have a drop-down instruction on what was Zoom, because people were like, what is it? I don't understand it. I push the button, nothing happens. And now we took it away. after the pandemic and everybody being shut down, we're like, you know what? They know it by now. And if they don't, they're probably not our person. They definitely are not. So let's talk about, in one word, this is for everybody in the panel, and Joy, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself so we don't lose you, and Robin as well. In one word, can each of you give our audience today your perspective as to what reinvention will mean in the beauty and wellness world, given the new normal mindset that's coming up? So you want to start? Want to start with Cherie?
Sure, I'll start. In one word, mindfulness. So my one word is mindfulness.
Kathleen?
Mine would be mirroring.
Janice?
Mine would be agility.
Robin?
Mine is microculturalism.
Ooh, like that. Joy?
Pure.
Sherry?
Digital.
Sherry?
Digital.
Great. So does anybody want to expand on that, what those words mean to you? I mean, Robin, I'm really interested in what is microculturalism, because we're hearing about multi, but what is that?
So I would love to say that I coined the term, but it's been around for a very long time. And what microculturalism is and where we're moving, it's almost sort of if you want to put it in your mind in a category, it's the opposite of macroculturalism and macroculture. So the idea is it's exploring the cultures of subgroups that are coming up. And this could be religion. This can be, different groups within a group. So it could be, airplane pilots. It could be, beauty enthusiasts. But it's the idea of really exploring the subculture and what the ethos is of that subculture within a culture. So it's really about, and I think moving forward, when you think about consumer research, and this goes across all brands, we're talking about beauty and wellness now, but keep in mind, it is now I plus community. I plus community. And that means that the brand is going to have to look at both individuals, a segment of one, and them as a part of their community. So as we know, trust has been destroyed with COVID, with a lot of the, racism, everything that's going on in our zeitgeist. Consumer trust is at the lowest. So that's what, in order now for brands to rebuild, to get back, to regain that trust, they're going to have to look at more than just the macro culture and consensus building, which is where we used to be. So moving forward, you're going to have to look closer at those subgroups, those communities, and you need to look closer, even closer, for the disruptive trends that start to emerge before waiting until they get to a mass and you go, oh, look, there's a trend. It starts way before that. And brands now have to train their focus away from consensus building to looking more at the diverse and divergent experiences of their consumers. So I think that is where we're going. And by the way, AI can't do that yet.
Anybody else want to jump in with that? That's amazing. That's a good word. I didn't know that word, so thank you. Kathleen?
So I couldn't agree more with Robin, and I used the word mirroring, and I really think that's what the brands are going to need to understand about their consumers. So definitely increase in segmentation. Everything they do is going to need to reflect, but it's going to have to reflect the values of the customers with whom they're going to be building trust with. So visual cues, and people are going to be demanding that extra quality from the brands in terms of how they're going to make the world better. I mean, the whole millennial class has really put a premium on that. And I think that's going to be a much more macro than micro part, but you have to find out what is it for your specific customers, and big data and data mining should be able to help you. And I think there's going to be a convergence to be able to do what Robin is saying is being demanded.
Who's next? Who wants to jump in?
I mean, I can
Sherry?
add on to that. Sure, absolutely. In terms of, Robin mentioned, well, like AI can't do that, but what can happen is, digital and the data that digital gives us, as Kathleen's mentioning, can allow us to have really custom tailored experiences for our audiences on digital. And what we know about the consumer journey to purchase in beauty and wellness is that 80% of that journey is spent in this sort of influence stage, pre-purchase, pre-search even. You're just becoming aware of what's out there and the trends. And so as brands start to look at their audiences and their data, they can really tailor their story to different groups. The brands that we work with have a wide variety of audience segments. When I was a teenager, the discovery process in beauty and wellness was about browsing stores and the shopping mall. And even pre-pandemic, what we saw was the rise of content online, storytelling, influencers, YouTube videos. The quarantine has been just basically a rocket booster, for digital. And what we know is that WSL actually reported that in March and April, 56% of customers ordered groceries and health products online for delivery. And what I think is really interesting about this, and why I chose the word digital, is that 50% of those ordered online for the first time. So, bringing in new demographics and older audiences that were a little more resistant, to using those platforms, were forced to, and that kind of adoption is what's really going to fuel change. Online sales jumped 24% in Q1 of 2020, and as of March comprised 48% of sales overall. So if we think about what's going on in beauty and wellness, online has been carrying businesses through this. And that change, we've always been wondering, years, the beauty and wellness sector has been talking about what's the percentage of sales in retail and brick and mortar versus online. That change is really what's going to fuel some of the innovation ahead.
Sherry?
Leslie, sorry to break in. There's a question for Robin and Sherry.
Go for it.
What tools, tactics, and activities are you using to gain insights?
Personally, we use a lot of analytics, Google Analytics, looking at the traffic. Facebook and Instagram have native analytics about who our audience is, what they're responding to.
I think on the research side, what has to happen is definitely in recruiting for studies, qual and quant, better representation of the population. Typically, we go by demographics. We say, okay, whites are 70%, blacks are 14%, Hispanics are 20%. We sort of need to really look at Pew Research data. You guys are probably very well aware of pewresearch.org, and encourage clients to get better representation. That's number one. With Cherie, I completely agree on digital. Here's where digital can really cross a lot of barriers. Again, if you look at statistics, and I'm not a statistics person, don't get it confused, but among African Americans, for example, their usage of mobile is way beyond any other population. So by using digital tools, you can really reach across many ethnicities, genders, etc. Now, for Indigenous people, I'm not quite so sure, but I would imagine mobile devices really are a barrier dissolving device, as it were, to achieving. And that's one tactic, sort of, or tool that you can use. And lastly, a tactic, I think, is really first educating oneself on the population that you're getting ready to talk to or research. That is a must. Do not depend on your client to help educate you. You must educate yourself and understand the perspective of the subgroup, whatever group that is that you're researching, and find the voice from them, not necessarily from the dominant culture writing about them.
Okay, Cherie, back to the original question.
So yes, we're still in the original question. And so I'm going to bring it together between the product and the digital. And when I think of mindfulness, I've been speaking about mindfulness for about 1.5 years now, just from a personal level, and where I really have been focusing on, because it is wellness. So the aspect I see are two prongs to it. You have global mindfulness, which we've been practicing for quite some time. It's about natural ingredients. It's about sustainability. It's about transparency. So it's me and my global world. But then you have everyday mindfulness, which is about me and my relationships around me, which we're getting a lot closer to. And especially right now, when even May was Mental Health Awareness Month. So mindfulness is really starting to bubble up. And where I see that is body-mind connection through products, inner healing, peace, and joy. So how we bring that together with products is, I would say, complementing a product supported by digital. For example, if I'm buying a body lotion and there is a tag on the bottle that says, open up this app while you use this product. So it kind of sets you up to, maybe the app is going to play relaxing music. Maybe the app is going to take you through a meditation or a mindfulness process while you're applying, because we are more at home these days. And then also, I'm seeing a lot of collaborations, even with mindfulness. For example, Amex, and I believe the app is Calm, and I have American Express, and they sent me this complimentary app that I can download called Calm, and it's about bringing down anxiety and nighttime stories before going to bed. So there's a potential amount of products that can be complemented to our world today from a mindfulness perspective. And we used to have like wellness, you know, at home spa, but we're going deeper now. There's a lot of, as we started to talk, our whole global world is upside down, and everybody wants to be right side up. But this is going to be some walking out before we get there. Also, I think that maybe Janice, you can speak to some of the particular ingredients or things that would complement some of the products that you think would help.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Cherie. So one of the things, you know, I said agility, right? So much has changed. You think back to March and April, and fashion houses have changed and they're making masks. Beauty companies, they've changed and they're making and retooling their factories to make personal care sanitizers. And we had to be, as a company, so agile to meet those new needs of the consumer, right? So our companies are coming to us and saying, okay, you have to change your resources for creativity, make something different, and we have to get to market quickly. So if you're not agile and you're not nimble, we were able to be there, be a true partner, and help those companies get to market much quicker. So agility, I think, is key for moving forward.
Joy, we haven't heard from you.
Yes, so my word was pure. I think it's very much a reflection of, I've spent well over the last 13 years in clean beauty with a focus also on sustainability. So that's going to be my perspective on a lot of these questions. And that sort of informed my choice of the word pure. I think in the new normal, health and safety are going to be more top of mind than ever for consumers. So all beauty and wellness brands, no matter where they fall in terms of level of naturalness, are going to need to be very mindful and understanding of what ingredients in their products have the potential for questions about health and safety. Consumers are going to be less and less willing to make trade-offs regarding their health coming out of COVID. They're going to demand safe, effective products that are increasingly free of potentially controversial ingredients. I think we will continue, there will be continuing demand for products like sulfate-free hair care, paraben-free skin care, and growing intolerance for questionable ingredients like talc in foundation powders, lead in our lipsticks. So I think we will start to see even more of a blurring potentially between clean beauty and mainstream beauty as the clean beauty brands continue to educate consumers on the ingredients with specific health concerns or perceived health concerns. So yeah, I think consumer health and safety perceptions are going to be very important as brands start to reinvent themselves in the new normal.
Awesome, great. So Sharia, I was just gonna say, instead of the product putting you to an app that plays, you know, relaxing music, I think mine is gonna have to say, clean up your room so your mom can have time off, right? Leave me alone, clean up your room, and then I can have my mindfulness moment. So how is the consumer going to change coming out of or through this pandemic? What's important to them and what matters less and why? So Robin, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure, I could lead us off on that. So, and this shouldn't be a news flash to anybody because everyone on this panel, we're all consumers of some sort. So the idea is here, we're all confused. Coming out of COVID, you know, going into anti-racism protests, our world is upside down. We're all confused. We don't all have answers, and brands should not expect that consumers will have the answers for them. So I want to introduce a term that some of you might already know since we're on that path, and it's a nod to one of my very great colleagues at L'Oreal, and it's VUCA, V-U-C-A. So if you have not heard that term before, write it down, V-U-C-A. What does it mean? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And there's a theory that we're living in a VUCA world. So every 5 years or 10 years, there's going to be major upsets like we've been seeing for the last 2 decades. So to Janice's point, if you're not agile and you have not practiced or developed your agility muscles as a brand, now would be a good time. Back to consumers. The idea here is consumers are learning fast. They've got a lot of access to information, and you need to develop a short-term and a long-term viewpoint. So in the short term, obviously understanding their behaviors coming out of you know, this sort of VUCA environment. What are the immediate behaviors? But those behaviors may not last, you know, over time. They are a response, sort of a knee-jerk response to what we're going through. So you should know what those behaviors are that are changing, but however, keep your eyes open for what is going to translate long-term. And so, you know, you've got 6 months, and then past 6 months, what's going to happen? Consumers are still fearful. There's no vaccine. So we've become fearful and mistrustful of each other. I don't want to step next to someone who potentially could be carrying a virus. I don't know. So that's affecting us. And to Joy's point, safety. Safety is going to start to manifest in lots of different ways. So is it going to be a proactive safety or a reactive safety? My guess is it's proactive, which is what Joy was alluding to, the idea of, are my products that I'm buying, is your brand representing clean to me? Clean meaning it's helping my immunity. It's helping me be a stronger person physically. mentally, mindfulness, all that kind of stuff is going to come into play. So I think that, the idea here is looking at consumers short term, but also long term, and rethinking the typical words that we use for safety, fair, trust. What do those words really mean today, 6 months from now, and 2 years from now? Because you have to produce and iterate very quickly as a
Wow,
brand.
that's incredible. Janice?
Yeah, Robin, and to play off that word trust, I truly believe that. I said people are very fearful and what are they going to go back to? But they're definitely going to go back to brands they know, that they love, and they trust, so that's going to be first. And what's interesting, like, what do we know right now? Well, a couple of things that are happening that are good. Americans are getting back to work. So that's great. The rate of unemployment is kind of cooled down. It went from 14.7 in April to 13.3 in May. The stock market is coming back, right? So that's another indicator. And new home sales rose 21% in May. So there's a pent-up demand. People want to get back to the stores and they want to shop, but how are they going to shop and what are they going to look for? And they're going to look for brands that they trust. In the Wall Street Journal today, Macy's just opened up on May 4th, and they're seeing that foot traffic. They're seeing people come back, and they think they have this grouping of products from off-brand products all the way to luxury products that are drawing that customer back, and that customer is going to come back in and buy what they're looking for. But they're going to look for, as Joy said, safety, right? So things that they know and things that are going to bring them a health benefit. So they're going to, what's trending on Mintel are ingredients like vitamin C, zinc, and elderberry. Those are things that they're going to be looking for in their products. And they're going to be looking for claims that say maybe purifying or glowing, something that's going to make them feel more healthy, and almost that, what Sheree was saying before, that beauty from within. So they're going to be looking for that. And Euromonitor said, that naturals, and we are often selling quite a few natural fragrances, that trend is going to continue. And they say when you have that vocabulary around natural, preventative, and health-orientated products, that's what people are going to be looking for past COVID. And then we know people are in this mindset, this self-care mindset. And what does it mean really from the food perspective? And what we're seeing, I chatted with our executive chef, and he said people are cooking more at home, of course, but they have more time, so they can prepare different foods. They're preparing different ethnic foods. And again, it's things that bring them comfort. And what's trending are ingredients like, we could imagine, like vanilla brings you comfort. But the surprise ingredient that brings people comfort is peanut butter. And you're going to see a lot of peanut butter trends coming forward, right? So that's such a change from 10 years ago, peanut butter, right? So what's going to be different? What's going to mean less? Well, consumers, again, are going to go for those brands that they trust over something that's brand new. So that's going to be a little harder when you're launching newer products. And it's going to be clean before green. So sustainability is still important, but that clean is very important as well. And, Joy, you're certainly the expert on that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see sustainability taking place.
Yeah. I'd like to build on, Janice, what you were saying, and also Robin, because it really is going to come down to trust. And Janice, what you were most recently saying about, if you're a new brand, how are you going to try to build that trust? I mean, people are going back to peanut butter and comforting brands like Macy's and things that make them feel safe because they're tried and true. If you're a new brand or you're planning to launch a new brand, you're going to need to figure out how to build that trust pretty quickly. And I do think that sustainability and transparency are going to be good ways in to build that trust. I think consumers are going to be demanding an almost radical transparency into things like product ingredients, even production processes, and pricing from the brands that they buy. I saw some interesting data. Despite the coming recession and financial uncertainties, I think clean beauty will progress. Safety, wellness, and sustainability are top of mind. The data that I saw, for example, I think it was from WSL, 64% of shoppers are willing to pay more for healthier skincare, and 50% of shoppers are willing to pay more at retailers that support sustainability. So of course, those numbers were pre-COVID, but I think that there definitely still will be a resurgence as we start to emerge here in terms of people being true to commitments to clean and sustainability. So brands and retailers are gonna need to continue to reinvent themselves and raising the bar on transparency and sustainability. I think that just quickly, Everlane is a really interesting example from the fashion space of a brand that makes its production costs and practices completely public. You can go onto their website and see how much it costs for them to make a particular sweater. They even explain how much the markup is on each one of their products and how it compares to other products in the industry. And so I really think more and more beauty and wellness brands could learn from the Everlanes of the world, as consumers are going to be increasingly expecting this type of radical transparency to gain long-term trust.
Wow.
Can I come in with 2 questions?
Oh, go for it.
Sure. So the first one is for Joy. So there's a little bit of questioning going on about what's really going to change as a result of COVID-19. So one question is, so ingredients that are now coming to market have to defend themselves against the currently used ingredients. And this person's a little bit skeptical that consumer interest in health and safety after COVID is strong enough driver to bring about new ingredients that may currently be more expensive. So what signs exactly are you seeing that support your belief that there are changes to come?
I think I can't name any names, but I recently had a consultancy within the clean beauty space, and I'm working now at Edgewell, which is a market leader in sun care. Without revealing too much on any front, I do know from a product innovation standpoint, from an R&D standpoint, that it remains very much top of mind within organizations on the very, very clean and organic side, as well as, sort of the Edgewells of the world who have some clean products and some more traditional products. There's very much a top of mind mindfulness in all of these organizations in terms of what ingredients are important to their target audiences, in terms of having them not be present in the formulas. There's a lot of consumer insights and research by these companies being done into what those types of ingredients or ingredient families are. And it definitely is something that's being considered to sort of further just sort of advance the products and continue to evolve them to better and better deliver on the promise of the brand.
Thank you. And then one last quick question. This is for anybody. The word transparency has been used by several of our panelists. How are you guys defining transparency? Because you might be talking about different things.
Janice, do you think this is a question for you?
I can take that for sure. When you think about transparency, a lot of people want to better understand from a fragrance perspective, where the fragrance is coming from, where the components are coming from, the traceability of that fragrance, and maybe what's in that fragrance. A lot of companies are starting to put on their websites exactly what's in their fragrance and being more transparent. And I think that's also driving the consumer to more natural. So we're noticing from our botanical department and our specialists that people are looking for simplicity. So not to get confused, but then what is that one single ingredient and what can it do for me? And I will also mention a little bit about that one question on cost. People will be more mindful of their spend, their overall spend, but in some areas they're going to trade up. In some areas, they're going to trade down. And I think when we say, will they pay enough for an ingredient that's clean? I think at times, yes, they're going to trade up. And other times they're going to trade down. It depends on what sector they're in.
Yeah. I just want to add to that, Janice, great point. How are brands going to regain that trust? You're going to have to get into the community, that sub-community. At the very beginning, I said I plus community. What is happening now is people are becoming more discerning about brands that actually support their community versus brands that say they support the community. So they're going to start to look to brands, even with lowered incomes, who are within their community from the inside out and look to support them in some way, because there's a lot of emotion tied up in that helps rebuild trust, right? It's this idea of this person is with me, this brand is with me, like my brother or my sister. So I trust them that way, as opposed to a brand coming in like a parent saying, do this or do that, or buy this because it's good for you. So keep that in mind, you know, in terms of rebuilding. You really have to now do a grassroots if you have not been doing before. And that's why these indie brands are kicking butt. And you're wondering where they're coming from. They're on Reddit. They're on these sites. They're understanding that grassroots trust building.
Mm-hmm.
Happening in politics too, but that's another conversation.
So I could probably tie it up with a bow here and talk about the idea of ingredients, clean, price, and how that's what's going on in the consumer mindset. Because, you know, what we know is convenience to purchase and availability is a big change that's happened for consumer mindset. And let me break that down for you. You guys are all experiencing this personally, right? Everyone is consumers. We're consolidating our trips to the store, and we're prioritizing what we can get at grocery and big box versus specialty. In fact, there was a study conducted by First Insight in April, and only 49% of women felt comfortable going to the grocery store, and only 24% of them felt safe shopping at malls. So what's going on in terms of that convenience to purchase is that if you're available, and you know, Influencer actually did a study before and during the pandemic, and they asked consumers, what are your priorities to purchase? And pre-pandemic, their priorities were quality, price, ratings and reviews, which is that trust component, and ingredients. And their current priorities now are quality, price, availability, and ratings and reviews. So that trust component again. So, you know, one thing that you might be surprised and say, well, what's not on the list though is clean. That same study did reveal that clean is still important. 68% are still reading ingredient labels before purchase, and 43% are prioritizing clean products for some purchases. Where 31% say they're prioritizing clean products because ingredients are always important to them. So it's still definitely on the radar. But what I think, you know, to that answer the question about what's changing and where it all comes together for me for digital is that it's more important than ever that you make sure your brand is accessible and available to purchase where the consumer is purchasing. So if you have the opportunity to get into more retailers and to, you know, address the price component and be in more big box stores, great. But online, the most important thing I can convey is now's not the time to cut back on your marketing spend, whether that's for organic search engine optimization or for paid per click advertising. Like, you want to make sure at the bare minimum when consumers go searching for you, you're there.
I can just bring one different topic in here of how the consumer is going to change. So you look in the food world, which is rapid cycle. I started to observe, and now research is showing, is that the consumer was going back to, you know, the comfort foods. Like if you look at Triscuits, they have like 30 different flavors. But you know what all that people wanted to buy now in the pandemic? Original. So they needed more space for that and get rid of the olive oil and the salt and the tomato basil. And I really think this is an opportunity, if you're running brands, is get rid of the 300 shades of nail polish, consolidate, give a core package. And it's very, very expensive to carry all those SKUs. I think consumers are going to give permission. You know, their house, the four walls, have become a buttress for safety. And they've all been forced to try now online delivery. 20 years ago, I was in the online delivery grocery business, you know, a precursor of Peapod out in Chicago. We would have loved a pandemic to happen, to force the trial, you know. Little did you know, that was the thing. And once you've seen that your home and having it delivered there and the quality of life that many people are saying, you know, it's simpler, it's easier. I don't think people are going to want to give that up. So how is a brand going to partner with consumers to let them keep that gift from the pandemic. Robin talks about its opportunities. So I think, how do we help consumers keep what was positive from this experience going forward?
Cherie, did you want to add anything? We didn't hear from you.
I was going to add, but I know we wanted to expand on other things, so I'm not going to add too much. I did not, unfortunately, hear the question clearly when it came across. But what I wanted to say about a few things with trust, as I see with products, that at this point, whatever products are coming out, I foresee have to be, those claims and what you say your product does will have to be tested. So where in the past, brands have maybe been able to skim and say, oh, because it has lavender, then it's going to do this. Now it's going to be a time to prove it out and do the testing that may have been skipped before with percentages, with agreement from the panel and the clinical testing. And kind of made me laugh, Kathleen, when you said peanut butter, because it's familiarity. What I wanted to say to the question was, all of our familiarity has been robbed from us. How many birthday parties are drive-bys, graduations that have to be digital, weddings that were pushed out, vacations that couldn't be made. We were raw, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but all of this was stolen from us so quickly. So we're looking for familiarity as easy as we can get it. And when you said peanut butter, I was like, there you go. Doesn't surprise me. And it was kind of funny. As far as the transparency and natural such, I remember a very first meme that I saw, and it kind of was like all of those natural crunchy people right now, they're going out looking for their disinfecting wipes. They were going back to what was familiar and what was going to protect me. Now, can we have multiple worlds? We can, but I think I saw this, and I'm not sure if P&G coined it or not, but it was responsible beauty. So it is the natural with science coming together is what I foresee as far as a product perspective and what the consumer is going to be expecting in safety.
Awesome. Incredible. Well, you were speaking, I just got myself the URL for peanut butter crunchy face scrub. So I'm going to be in business. That's going to be the first Covey product. You can have a face mask. What do you see as the biggest challenge for beauty and wellness brands then with all this coming? Joy, do you want to start?
Yeah, and I think it's actually very much a build on I think Kathleen's point and others' point on simplicity. I think brands are really going to need to internalize the fact that consumers are facing a time of unprecedented uncertainty. Even as we emerge here, we still don't really know what's going on. In the face of this, brands will really need to embrace that simplicity. More than ever, consumers are going to be experiencing decision fatigue. I know I picked this up from Ina Garten, my favorite celebrity chef. She eats oatmeal for breakfast every day because she has decision fatigue. It's too much to decide what she's going to make, so she just has oatmeal every day. And I am doing the same. And it's so easy. And I don't have to make a decision in the morning what I'm going to eat. It's just done for me. Clutter is going to mean lost conversions going forward, no question. I just read a study from Inmar Analytics that said sales at what's called limited assortment stores like Trader Joe's are projected to grow by over 5% in the next 3 years, while sales at your regular grocery store is pretty much going to be flat. So, consumers are, making decisions and saying, okay, I'm looking for that simplicity. I don't maybe want all of those Triscuit flavors. I think consumers are craving that simplicity. So brand narratives, product assortments, package labels, they're all going to need to be potentially reinvented and pared down to their purest form in an effort to keep it simple, easy, and time-saving for consumers.
Robin, did you want to jump in on that?
The eternal optimist I am, I don't really see a whole lot of challenges. I see a whole lot of opportunities. Past COVID, going into that time when we don't think about COVID anymore, we think about other things, because there'll always be something. So I really invite the attendees of this panel to think about, reframe their thinking of challenges and seeing them as opportunities, and specifically opportunities in terms of product development, opportunities in terms of the shopping experience, which is going to change tremendously, opportunities that these subgroups are going to offer. I think that Kathleen makes a very good point about simplicity. However, as a woman of color, when you think about, for all you beauty product developers out there who develop foundation, and you think, oh my God, there's like, 80 SKUs. What are you telling me? I can't have 80 SKUs? I think the point is, with women of color, no, you don't get excused to just make, 1 or 2 colors. Like Crayola did a box of crayons representing skin tones. So yes, you're going to have many SKUs there. However, the shopping experience potentially can really help you digitally. So as digital improves to HD, colors are better. Do you have to carry them in the store? Maybe not. Maybe you carry them at a, with a special online experience. I don't know. I don't purport to tell you how to sell your cosmetics, but I think that it is very important to keep in mind that, this time is a time of opportunity and innovation, and you can innovate in an uncomplicated way. There's no reason that innovation has to be complicated. Keeping in mind mindfulness, the idea of holistic, the idea of not just seeing, one part of the face, but the entire face and the entire way that, the face or the body or the skin works with the rest of the individual ecosystem, their lifestyle, what they eat. I think the beauty industry, the wellness industry is going to start to have to pay way more attention to those areas and not just be in their silos. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cherie, did you want to add something there?
So I'm going to jump on what Robin had said about opportunity. There's a tremendous amount of opportunities. Our opening paragraph and tag is the wellness industry combined with beauty is $4.5 trillion worth, right? So yes, we have gone through changes where people have had adjustments in their jobs and such, but even if you dropped it down a couple trillion, you still have $1 trillion to work with. And those stats are on Global Wellness Institute on their website if you really want to take a deep dive into really seeing how that all breaks down. But I think looking at the opportunities for me, and going back to mindfulness, again, we're going back to what we're trying to get normal. What our new normal will be changed and life will be different, but the level of stress, anxiety, calmness, peace, wholeness, holistic, there's 6 different categories that you can build into. And it's not just skincare, it's also in-home. What can you do to create that in-home experience? If people will be working a little bit more from home, because as corporate, the bigger companies kind of adjust their schedule and open up, not everybody's going to be diving right back into the corporate world again. Even their environment at work is going to be building in mindfulness moments on purpose. Like computers, as I've read, are going to be popping up, trying to take your 10-minute mindfulness, step away from what you're doing to recenter. So there's a lot of potential. And I really like the way Robin kind of flipped that around for us. So if we just dig and really look, and you just have to look in your own home what those changes can be.
Awesome. I think it's great. I mean, I'm a consumer, and I think your whole idea about calm and cleaning it up and simplicity, it appeals to me as a consumer, because everything's so crazy out there. And decision fatigue, absolutely. We're all just, you can't even go into the aisle of the supermarket and even look. So it's just, you can't even decide which is the soda you want, right? So
Leslie, I've got a question for Sherry in terms of, packaging and how packaging and design might move forward, with this time, seeing as you have to face sustainability, you have to stay, and price, are people going to want to pay for that? How do you keep simplicity? How do you, make sure and create a calmness, a mindfulness that is easily translatable in the packaging, even online? Like, I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation we were already grappling with, right? A lot of our natural brands would conduct research with their consumers and find out that, like, there was this sort of dichotomy of what's the value of the outer carton, for a high value skincare product, it's telling all these rich stories and the transparency and the ingredient clinicals and all the stuff that justifies the value of the product inside, which, maybe could be $70 for a tiny little carton. And so there's a lot there, but if you've got a sustainability commitment, how do you balance? And so, what had been happening previously was a commitment to protecting the product inside, right? Because product spoilage and breakage during shipment is the worst sustainable, disaster that can happen. But I think, now we're going to be actually entering some of the things I've been thinking about are the new challenges of, like, gosh, we've worked so hard to get rid of that outer wrapping, the tamper-proof, like, plastic wrapper. And now, like, is that going to come back? Because that shows that the product is, pure and safe. So,
Wow.
Robin, I don't know if I have an easy answer for you, but what I'm doing with my brands is we're really just looking at what's our true north, what values do we believe in, and then how do we translate that onto the packaging. And I'm hearing you, Joy, talk about, like, how we can streamline and provide more quiet and calm and mindfulness. And so I do think there's going to be a prioritization that has to be made there.
Wow, so interesting, guys. Kathleen, did you want to say something?
Just last night, I planted the paper packaging that came around a beauty product with a candle in it. And it was because they had embedded poppy seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought that was such a great thing. I'm going to think about that brand every year that the poppies come up. And
by the way, that seed paper is so expensive. Like, you should be thankful to them for making that investment. That was a real investment of that brand into making that possible, because that paper is not, what I'd like to see is, as demand increases, availability and cost will go down. But currently that stuff is really out of reach for a lot of brands.
Wow. And what you just said, what you all brought up about packaging, and I just thought of myself when I went into shop. We're opening up here down in New Orleans, and I don't want to touch anything on the shelf. I'm afraid other people have touched it. So what do I do? And then what if you've taken the plastic away? Can someone clean it or not clean? It's a big mess. So both the beauty and wellness industries are very talking about touch, high touch, and sensorial, particularly with products and gaining trial. How is that going to reinvent itself? What about the concept of contactless? Kathleen, you're our lead on this.
I think it's still going to be highly sensorial. I don't think that or experience is going to go away. I'm going to touch on 3 points that, from my vantage point, are important. First is sampling. This category lives by sampling. So someone is going to really need to crack the code to be hygienic, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly. I don't have the answer, but I know retail is dying, and this has really hurt them. So what could they do to bring about and be an experience center where you could get sampling and trying of products, which is so important? I think that could be a potential opportunity, but I still think you need to find it at home as well. So that would be the first one. The second one is just, what other sensory experiences do you bring in and play on harder? All good marketing and branding is 5 senses. It's just going to be, some of the other ones will come to the forefront. So some things will come with scent and beautiful design. And where does AI come in here so you can feel it tactily, but maybe you're not touching it? We're going to need to see things in that area. And then just the last one, just to be very topical, if we get wave 2, like the Spanish flu, it comes back in the fall, I think you're going to see some companies coming in and being playful with PPE and putting really interesting and fun designs on it. And, the biggest challenge is who's going to design the see-through mask, so you can wear your lipstick and people are going to see it.
Kathleen, I agree, sampling is so important, especially coming with fragrance. And I think you go back to that time. Remember, you go to the store and it was before the tamper-proof packaging and everything else. You could pick up that bottle of shampoo and what would you do? You would open it up and you would smell it, right? And we're going to lose some of that. It's going to be lost as they go online, right? How are you going to smell? How are you going to get that emotion? We're such high touch and we're so emotional, and that fragrance brings in that emotional piece, right? So, and playing with all those 5 senses. And as more things go online and you're not going to be able to do that, it's really going to be so critical about brand positioning and brand communication and how they communicate that. And it's going to be a challenge on how to communicate fragrance and how to communicate that emotional feeling that people get when they smell something, and the personalization that people get when they smell it. Someone will smell it one way and then someone else will smell it another way. So it's certainly going to be a challenge.
Well, I'll bring it back then to the idea of reviews. There's been a lot of development in reviews and the ability for consumers to filter by, similar age or demographic. But scent is such a challenging one. I think that's where, Robin, to your question about packaging, like we have to rely on the colors, the shapes, the symbols that we use in design to convey some of that. We want to make sure that the packaging does represent that experience inside. To the other aspect of sampling, because we'll all go around it, I feel like you have a different perspective. Here's some interesting things where digital, I think, can come into play. Home has become the hub, and it was already a trend, before this. Sure, you're so right. We mentioned earlier that older audiences have been forced to try new technologies during this time. Both my mom and my 7-year-old now can operate a Zoom call independently. And that acceleration into use of technology has actually been bridging the gap in a lot of areas. So doctors are giving consultations online. I have skincare brands that are giving consultations and recommending products. Hairdressers are not only learning to cut hair online, but they're giving consultations to others on how to create that specific look. And this tiny little, segment of what's going on is going to fuel other innovation. So if you feel comfortable taking your doctor's appointment online, well, then you're probably going to feel more comfortable with augmented reality and virtual try-ons. And, back in March, Google actually did a survey of people, and women 18 to 34 said 30% said they would want that kind of augmented reality and virtual try-on experience from a brand. I'd love to see what the stats are now. I think you'd actually expand that demographic. This concept of virtual try-on and augmented reality, if you haven't seen it or heard about it, it's not new. In 2018, Benefit Cosmetics introduced their brow try-on feature, and they really hit it out of the park. It's a superb app. They are able to really, understand every hair on your brow, and then they're augmenting and enhancing that to give you a sense of what the effect is of trying on the product. And the results speak for itself. They cite that they had an 80% increase in conversion rate online for people that use that tool. And so other brands have followed suit. There's a wide variety of AI and augmented reality tools you can use out there. And I think we're just going to see an explosion of that to kind of complement this high touch experience.
Cherie, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm going to add something to that. I was going to say something else about high touch, because as a product developer, it is, for me, sensorial. Everything is about what I see, smell, taste, experience. I'm going to speak to one piece, and then I'm going to answer the question a little bit differently. I think what we have done as an industry in some fashion with clean beauty is to eliminate fragrance as if it was the culprit. So I believe, and because we can start incorporating fragrance back into our products as well, to again bring in that mindfulness and that experience that we want to get back to, the joy, the peace, the calm, and such. But one of the things that I was reading the other day from the scientists is that how can we mimic physical touch, because we've separated ourselves from physical touch. And in physical touch helps to increase our immunity system. It helps to release those endorphins that help us to feel good. And although we can sort of mimic it with devices and massages and such, I think going back to bringing that whole world together of the touch that we've lost. We've been asked not to touch other people, and that, like, we're born to be cuddled. I mean, we're held, we're everything. So how do we get back to that? And I see that there's opportunities for maybe just different devices that could be used at home for massaging, for touching and such. And then again, going back to incorporating fragrance, that one experience that we just kind of eliminated, that has a lot to do with our how our brain works with smelling and creates those good feelings. I know, Janice, if you have anything to add to that with fragrance.
I'm in total agreement. I will say that.
I think the beauty industry would be wise to maybe look a little bit at the gaming industry and how they bring to life virtual experiences. Because I do believe, and I agree with Cherie, the idea of this whole virtual world is at its rudimentary stage. It is going to explode. It is going to be amazing. There was a fashion designer, Hanifa, who basically sent her clothes down a runway without any human beings in them. It was all virtual. And not only that, the types of models that she had represented various shapes and sizes, which unheard of in the fashion industry. All of them breaking new ground. And I think that as digital becomes more efficient, it increases, it brings that experience or experiences to life better. I think you're going to see a whole lot of migration, as Cherie was saying, onto that platform. And beauty needs to be, in the front of that pack and not at the back of it, and not think, oh, geez, I can't get my product sampled. You're going to be, waiting a long time. Whereas you have people who are at the front of the beauty industry and wellness who are figuring out how to create that digitally. So don't let digital be a barrier. Instead, look at it as an opportunity as to how can we translate our senses, because if you're not looking at it, best believe the gaming industry is looking at it. And they're probably way leaps and bounds ahead of how to convey fragrance, digitally, visually.
Oral care was looking at that 5 years ago, and look at the innovations now with apps and things to encourage kids to, gamification of teeth brushing. So
gamification is a big word. Question for you guys. Do you think the sampling boxes are going to increase? Because I know that, there was a big explosion in them and then they kind of died out. Is this a moment? Anybody know?
They'll be innovative. I think innovation has to come in here, because I don't think people are going to tolerate having a lot waste, and not being environmental friendly. You see Fresh, they do those little blister packs so you can put on your lip tint and try that rather than the bullet. So I think you're going to see things moving along that direction. And then I mentioned a macro, maybe it will be a reinvention in retail, where you will have a good part of it devoted to sampling, and then the product can get delivered, you know, online.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
seen a few really cool innovations for sampling at retail. One of the ideas I really like is just a motion, you know, sensory dispenser, kind of like what you see for soap, liquid soap, which would be great for creams and lotions. And what I like most about this is that it allows sampling in new areas. So that could move into big box and grocery in a way that hasn't been accessible previously. I think, you know, when we talk about prestige beauty, we're going to see a big change. We know that as Sephora and Ulta are reopening, those testers aren't going to be available anymore. They'll have product on display and it'll be encased, so you can just see the packaging. But what I've heard talked about is the idea of a sampling bar. So imagine there's a person behind glass who's at the center of the store that you can, on your phone or on a device, order you know, a sample, and then they'll let you know when it's ready. And by the way, you know, they can notify you on your phone. This has got some interesting implications, right? I mean, first of all, I doubt that that sampling bar will be able to have every single product in the store. And so I think that's going to become a real pay to play challenge for brands, you know, right? Because sampling leads to purchase. So the brands that can afford to participate in that sampling program are likely going to have some benefit there. And then in addition, when I get notified that my sample is ready, well, then that enables the store to give me all sorts of other push notifications of coupons or other offers. And, you know, consumers were already using their phone in store for purchase. So now we've unlocked a whole other level of engagement.
And you know, with the pandemic, I don't know about where you guys are, but here in New Orleans, that you have to literally stand out. You can stand outside the restaurant and make your order, and then they hand it to you, very much like that. We're getting used to that, which seems so crazy, but that's
and
really
that
interesting.
Adoption in other industries is, of course, going to breed into beauty and wellness.
So interesting. So another question for you. We've got 2 left. And we're getting to our end here. What are the most critical changes that we must make in the beauty and wellness industries to face the future effectively? And Janice, we're going to start with you on that.
Sure, no, that's great. And one of the big changes, I'll be short and sweet, but one of the big changes that we're going to see is that the beauty and wellness industries are going to merge, right? So they're going to be looking for more health benefits coming from your beauty products. And it has been merging, but it's going to merge much more. And the other thing that we keep saying is that we're all in this together, right? So what is that driving? That's driving people to buy more locally, to really help their communities, help their shops in their towns, things like that. But even from our perspective, and when we're starting to see disruption in supply chain and not being able to make certain things, that's going to drive it even further for people to buy more locally and support that area. So those are the few things that I see that are going to be coming with beauty and wellness and the reinvention.
Can I just ask you, are you talking about supply chain coming from around the world? It's going to come more locally, or you mean micro locally, to borrow from Robin?
That's a great question. Around the world, right? So we're definitely we get supply from all over the place, and now we're looking for that supply to be more locally. And even with our specialty botanicals and what we extract from our botanicals, we're definitely looking for that to be made more in the US. And then it even goes down further, you know, into your communities and people buying from their local markets and farmers markets.
Very cool. Joy, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Quickly, I think experiencing a global health crisis firsthand has opened the eyes of a lot of people to the fact that these types of large-scale issues go well beyond the hypothetical. This is not just a Hollywood movie anymore. It's real. It can be real, and it has real and lasting impact on our lives, our communities, and our economies. So one area where I really think beauty and wellness brands will need to reinvent themselves is sustainability. I know I'm a little bit of a broken record, but you know, eco-anxiety from a consumer insight standpoint is a real issue for consumers, especially millennials and Gen Zs. I saw a WGSN survey from last year that found that 90% of people globally feel at least somewhat uneasy about their future because of the climate crisis. That's a lot of people. I think that as we emerge from the coronavirus, while health and safety are going to be top of mind, Eco-anxiety is also going to move back to the forefront for a lot of people. So as we look to the future, brands in beauty and wellness are really going to need to hone in on how their products and packaging impact the environment and continue to take steps to make meaningful changes. You know, it's going to be evolution and not revolution, but not starting to at least consider taking steps is going to mean risking losing the trust of a growing number of people with eco-anxiety and you know, trust we've talked about quite a bit on this webinar is going to be paramount to emerging from this stronger.
Sherry?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just further what Janice and Joy just said in that I think we are going to see more engaging, custom tailored user experiences. That's going to be really essential. Robin started us off with that. You know, we're talking about using our core brand DNA and our knowledge of our niche audiences to not have a one size fits all story or consumer experience, but personal and personalized, you know. So now's the time for brands to be more human. You know, Janice, you're mentioning that, like, this was already something that was important for indie brands. You know, people believe in people, and there's a reason that founder stories and indie brands have had such success. And now is the time to lift that corporate veil, be more transparent, and be even more human, whether that's your commitment to sustainability or your commitment to people, or, you know, all those different things. One of the things that has been a real driving force for MSLK is the concept of a belief-driven buyer. That this was something that we started talking about back in 2017. 87% of people will choose a product or a company because they advocate for an issue they care about, and 67% of those people who define themselves as belief-driven buyers bought a brand for the first time because of their position on an issue they cared about. And I think that really is so timely right now.
Kathleen, do you want to finish up?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree 100%. On the research front, two things. One, empathy. We overuse that word, but it's very important in research. We have to understand and rethink empathy, not just, you know, when you think beauty, but across all segments, LGBTQ, women, men, all genders, ethnicities. We have to up the game of empathy. That's number one. And number two is research is now not just a validation process. It is, big companies are using it as a validation for iteration. So constantly, and there are many qual and quant companies that are doing that now. The idea is making research faster so you can go into iterations faster, you can get it, you can test, get it out to consumer, make corrections, and keep going. That's where research is moving, and those are the critical changes I think the beauty and wellness industry have to also do, be able to validate and iterate very quickly, incredibly quickly.
Kathleen, did you want to finish up that question?
Sure. I'm going to focus it more on, and I agree with what all my colleagues said, the world right now, what insulates a brand, and I think Sherry and I have a similar belief to that. I mean, at the Branding Clinic, we have been for the past 15 years on, you have to position yourself on an emotional end benefit, because that's what drives long-term consumer loyalty to your products. And so if I'm looking at beauty and wellness, I would be shifting away from my little loyalty programs and just saying one ingredient does this and that. And I would be doubling down on what is that overall emotional and benefit promise that we're going to give and drive consumer loyalty.
Cool. And somebody else? Did someone want to jump in there?
No, I think I'm the only one that hasn't responded, but I agree with everyone.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'll give you a list of products of ideas. So.
Great. Last question for you all. How do you see the retail channel environment reinventing itself? Sherry, do you want to start?
Well, and I shared a lot about the reinvention I see with sampling, so I'll defer to my colleagues to talk about this.
You know,
Kathleen?
if you're not online, you got to be online. I mean, multi-channel is where it's at, or you're only online. The world has turned upside down.
And Joy?
Yeah, just building on what Kathleen is saying, you know, multi-channel, I think, is going to be redefined. So, you know, I think we're going to see things like live stream e-commerce move to the forefront, where brands are able to create a branded experience through live stream, sort of the next generation of a QVC, if you will. You can have celebrities, you can have founders live streaming, selling products to anyone virtually anywhere. And I think that's the future of retail. It's something like $4 billion in sales in China is already being done through live stream commerce. So there's a tremendous opportunity for that to grow here in the US as well.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Joy. I read recently two things. One, of course, the explosion of TikTok and using this idea of entertainment to sell beauty, et cetera, which was, you know, YouTube had a little bit of it, but TikTok is taking it to a whole nother level. And the Tmall at Alibaba, where you have, you know, your mall experience online, and it's got, you know, hundreds more stores that you can spend hours browsing, as opposed to walking the streets, going into one store, into a next store. So are we seeing the death of retail in bricks and mortar? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but certainly I'm hearing, you know, the woman in the opera warming up.
Well, those are all the questions that we have. Shannon, do you want to take us into Q&A and see if the audience has some Q&A for us?
Yep, I have a couple of questions, and if anybody who's listening who has more questions that they have not posted yet, definitely do post those. So the first question is going back to the definition of beauty and where that is shifting. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but do the panelists think there's a trend towards more internalization of beauty? Will that trend continue post COVID-19, or will we revert and go back to more externalized visions of beauty?
I'll jump in on that one. So just coming from Euromonitor, going across the globe of what they believe in their trends, and they come out with their top 10 global trends every year, and then they modified those trends after COVID to say what is going to be moving forward. And yes, that definitely this beauty of how we feel about ourselves and how we express ourselves, not that we have to be absolutely perfect and our makeup has to be perfect and we have to be Instagram ready, but the fact that that beauty is coming from the inside out is definitely going to move forward.
Well, and I think also a lot of innovation is driven by the younger demographics, and Gen Z is really committed to the idea that everyone is, you know, special, that they're special, and there's a lot of personalization wrapped up in that we're going to need to keep pace with to keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm. Then it seems like a lot of what we talked about applies to women. What about the men?
You know, I'm so glad you asked that. Because I think that, you know, beauty and men is a category that is growing and growing and growing. One of my good friends, Ainsley, is in men's grooming, and he puts together a lot of stuff with Fashion Week and here in New York and around the globe. And we've always gone back and forth on that. You know, what is beauty doing for men? And I think with the advent of sort of gender blending, there is definitely going to be more beauty products available. But I think it's going to be under a sort of a gender blend type of, you know, androgynous is kind of like an old word. So I'm using gender blending instead. But this idea of, you know, yes, it can be for men, it can be for women, but, you know, it's available to you, you know, if you want it as a man. And then specific grooming things that men have, I think is going to continue. Also like beard oil, you know, all those things that men use in particular, just for them, I think that's a huge growth category. And it's going to continue to grow.
So if I could just build on that, I have a 22-year-old. I know his whole fraternity house and those guys, it's gonna skyrocket. These guys are talking you got to be in it.
Yeah, is the communication going to need to be different?
Yeah.
Yes.
More rugged words, you know, a little more ruggability, but they have girlfriends, you know, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry, I see you trying to break in.
Yeah, I am trying to break in. This was such a joy getting everyone together, because this has been the whole 12 weeks. Like, okay, let's get to this. So I see two avenues though. Is gender neutral, which I think, Robin, you were communicating. So that's pretty much how the packaging is presenting itself, whether it's male, female, however someone identifies themselves. So it's not pretty, it's not full, it's just there. So there's that category. And then it is separated out into men's category, specifically for how different, whether it's a scrub, a shave, a treatment of sorts. So I see it definitely growing, but I see them as two different categories. And I just did a presentation the end of last year with a conference that I was at. And what I wanted to also say is that they have hygiene that they have to take care of as well. So I don't think that we purposefully were just trying to speak to women during this platform, but what we're seeing is across the board. And the last thing I'm going to say, even for my husband, I had to give him 4 haircuts in the last 12 weeks, and he's very specific. And I'm a licensed esthetician and cosmetologist, so I know a little bit of what I'm doing. But that doesn't go away. They still have to present themselves online, and they're still doing the same Zoom meetings, or they're going to sales and such.
Yeah, I just want to add that a lot of the stats I shared were gender neutral. 1 in 5 men and women listed the things they're most anxious to get back to as fitness and beauty. And that was in a big thing of see friends and family and go back to work. And they're like, fitness and beauty. So everything that we talk about is very gender fluid these days. We flat out had Sephora tell us, don't bring me another male specific skincare line. They're really looking for that gender fluid.
All right, so we're at time, but Leslie, is there anything you wanted to say to wrap things up?
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I feel like I got such an enormous education, and it reminds me of, oh my God, how much I love beauty. It's such a wonderful, interesting, fascinating business that incorporates everything from technology to psychology to politics to, it is it's really just one of the most amazing things. I have learned so much. I bet you all your panels have. Peanut butter face scrub is mine. That's all I'm saying. But the rest of you, go get them. So thank you for having me. That was totally awesome. And I'm just so proud to be here with you all. And I want to do this again. I want to listen. I want to be here for the next one.
We just may do that again.
We might.
3 months, right?
We'll
check in.
Shannon, if people have questions following up, will you share our contact information so that they could certainly reach out if a question wasn't able to be?
Certainly will do. And I'll send you some of the questions that we did not get to ask that were a little bit specific versus broader. But let me toss it finally to Robin, my co-chair of the New York chapter for QRCA. Robin, do you want to send us off?
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you, attendees. Thank you, everyone who felt that they got something from this panel. I think all of us really enjoyed participating. I want to thank my fellow panelists for allowing me to be on it. Most importantly, I want to thank our Vanna White, Shannon Danzy, who kept us going through all, which is incredible. Our moderator, Leslie. And please tune in to a lot of great programming coming up on QRCA.org. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.